chemical process calculations classroom. In the previous lecture we have seen average molecular weight and determination of density. In this lecture we are going to see the basic principles of material balance. Ready?
Hello friends. So then we are entering into model number 2, where we are going to discuss about material balance. Material balance, what does it represent? Why one should do material balance? So essentially material balance is an expression representing law of conservation of mass. Mass can neither be created nor be destroyed, but one form of mass can be converted into another form of mass. Okay, so we are going to perform material balance in a chemical industry unit wise. We are going to have, we know that there are different unit operations as well as unit processes that are involved in a chemical industry, right? So for each unit operation or each unit, we are going to account the how much mass of feed is entering, how much mass of products are leaving the system. Okay, so that constitutes material balance. That is the total mass that is entering into a system and total mass that is leaving the system. So that is overall material balance. And we have another one called individual material balance, which is component material balance or element material balance. So if chemical reactions are involved, we are going to do elementary balance. Each element like oxygen, nitrogen, how much it is entering, how much it is leaving. Like that elementary basis material balance can be performed if a chemical reaction is involved in a system. If there is no chemical reaction involved in a system, there is no need to perform element based material balance. It is enough if you do the material balance based on a molecule, okay, or a compound or a mixture, right? So that way we have to do material balance. Why one should do material balance? How it helps in an operation? Say for example, we know that any chemical compound or any product in a chemical industry, it's not that there is only one method available, there is one raw material from which it can be produced. Okay, so there can be various number of methods which can be present to produce a same product. For a given product, there may be various raw material sources can be available, and for the same raw material there can be various routes can be available. It can be chemical route, it can be biochemical route, it can be electrochemical route, right? So or it can be a nanotechnology route, okay, it can be thermal process, it can be ultrasonication process, right? So like that there can be various routes which can be available to produce a given product, but in that we have to choose. This material balance helps us to choose which method to choose. That is, it helps us in decision making. Okay, it helps us in decision making. And also if we know that how much raw material is required to produce all this, so this material balance helps us to produce effectively a product, effective operation of a chemical industry, and also economic production. It helps us to know economic production, how economical we are, how much raw material we are using, how we are effectively using it. So that way economically it will be helpful to us. And also if you account for, if you know that how much pollutant we are releasing into the system, if we are able to materialize it, we can go for a route which is more eco-friendly. So it helps us to decide on which method is effective, which method is economical, and which method is eco-friendly. So for that this material balance helps us. Okay, so material balance helps us to for decision making. It helps us to make decision, and also it helps us in planning stage itself, while planning and designing of the process. If you are in a planning stage or designing the process for any process control, we want to do process control, all these places this material balance plays an essential role. Also if you want to optimize the process, in process optimization also this material balance plays a role. Process optimization represent to, by combining various 5 different units are there, if we can combine them into one unit and optimize the reactions or physical separations that can take place in a single unit. So it is also possible to have that one. Okay, so that way it contributes in process optimization, as well as if those who want to do this computational studies, process simulation, for all these purposes, for this process simulation purposes also, this material balance is helping us. Okay, so material balance helps us in decision making, helps us in planning and design of processes, and it helps in process optimization, and it helps in process simulation studies. Okay, for example, it also helps to determine the what is the material requirement. I want to do perform, I want say this basis, we are going to discuss about basis later. So we want to determine how much quantity, how much amount of substance is required. Say for example, I want to produce some 100 tons of product, then how much raw material is required, right? So that way, if it is reaction is involved. Okay, so without reaction also, if how much raw materials are required. So to determine the material requirement, for example, I want to extract oil from seeds, you know that groundnut seeds, then the tamano oil seeds. So it's different, from different seeds we extract oil, right? It is a mass transfer process, leaching out. We are leaching out the oil, we are extracting the oil out of a solid substance. Okay, so how we are taking it out? We have to need some solvent to it. We have to add some solvent to the seeds, and then this one of the constituent, this oil will be dissolving into the solvent. So how much solvent is required to perform this extraction of oil, right? So for that also material balance will determine. From material balance we will come to know, if we have to extract this much oil, I should supply this much solvent to the system. So the requirement of solvent to this extraction of oil is one example where we have to know the how much material requirement is needed. And another example is the absorption. So we always get some flue gas from any chemical plant, combustion chamber or gasification chambers, pyrolysis chamber. We get waste gases which is called flue gases. The flue gases will contain lot of pollutants. Okay, this we have discussed in introductory lecture also, that the SOx, NOx content in air needs to be reduced before we let it go into the environment, right? So that way this SOx, SO2 or NOx content, this needs to be reduced. The ppm levels or the concentrations level of this SOx, NOx or other components needs to be reduced below the permissible limit. Government it gives us a maximum permissible limit, MPL. So we cannot send that flue gas into the atmosphere, because we have to obey the local laws, legislations, strict legislations that are passed by the union government or state government, right? So that way it is essential we perform some absorption. So from the flue gas, by using water as the solvent, from gas we have to reduce the concentration of solute. Let me say the solute is the toxic substance or pollutant. We have to reduce its concentration. Let us say initial concentration is 5%, I have to reduce it to 3% of solute in this all gaseous mixture. So we have to determine how much water or any other solvent like benzene or acetone is required to separate out, absorb the solute from the gaseous mixture into the liquid. So that way this absorption of gas by a liquid, in that we have to determine what is the solvent requirement. Okay, solvent can be simple, water is a universal solvent, so we have to determine how much solvent is required. So that way also we have to perform material balance to come to know how much solvent we have to supply to effect the required separation, right? So that is another one example. Another example, we have to do evaporation. Evaporation means I have a dilute solution of NaOH. Okay, let me say I have a dilute solution of NaOH, but I want to get a particular normal solution, so particular molarity solution, molar solution. So to get a particular strength of NaOH solution, how much water I have to remove from NaOH, dilute solution, right? So we have a dilute NaOH, I want to get it a concentrated NaOH, particular concentration of NaOH. So how much water needs to be separated out by evaporation? So in evaporation we boil out the liquid solvent. Here in this case if it is water, how much water has to be removed. So that also we can quantify by performing the material balance. Okay, material balance is an expression of law of conservation of mass. Okay, so and other than that, if you have n number of parameters, if you want to know determine the unknown parameters present in it, for that also this material balance is very much essential. So we have to perform material balance to know the unknown parameters in design calculations. Okay, with respect to exam point of view also, first we should perform material balance before going for energy balance or design calculations in the chemical engineering courses like fluid mechanics, heat transfer, mass transfer, CRE2, equipment design, process optimization, process control. We are going to have project, BTech project. In all these places we are going to do all this energy balance, design, everything. Before that, preliminary, what we have to do is material balance. We have to do material balance to we have to perform material balance as a prerequisite to go further. Okay, so that way this material balance helps us to do calculate the unknown quantities. It helps us to determine what is the material requirement. It helps us in designing. It helps us in planning stage. It helps us in decision making, which route to take. Right. So that way this material balance is important in our chemical engineering. Okay, and this material balance can be two ways. One is overall material balance, another one is individual material balance. Overall material balance refers to total compounds, how much feed. Let me say feed. If I say overall material balance, the total feed, let me say gas mixture is entering in absorption. A gas mixture of A and B is entering. So A plus B together, how much? It is overall material balance. Okay, so how much total feed, how much total solvent entering, how much total solvent that is leaving the system, how much total gas is leaving the system. So as simple as it is, there is one gas entering, one water is entering in an absorption column, and there is one gas stream leaving, and there is one liquid stream leaving. So there is two input and two output. So easily we can make overall material balance. That is for total material that is entering. What is individual material balance? Individual material balance refers to component balance. That is component balance means individual component. Let me say if it is as I said, if a gas mixture is entering, I told. If I say the material balance for solute A, or if I want to perform a material balance for solvent B, if I equate the amount of solute A present is gas entering, amount of solute A present in liquid entering, amount of solute A present in gas leaving, amount of solute present in the liquid leaving the system. So if I am combining this, if I am making the input equal to output of this thing, so when I do the balance, that is called individual material balance or component material balance. Okay, so we have overall material balance and individual material balance. That is with respect to, and beyond that, how we can classify the material balance as for two cases, with chemical reaction, without chemical reaction. Material balance with chemical reaction, material balance without chemical reactions. Okay, material balance with chemical reaction means it is undergoing reaction is taking place in the system. There may be heat, that material get formed, the material may get disappeared, the material may get accumulated, right? So there may be accumulation, there may be formation, there may be disappearance. That is A disappearing means A becomes B. There is no A present in the system, right? So that way, when the chemical reaction is involved, material balance will have the terms input means the material input, material output, the rate of formation of material during the reaction, within the system, the rate of disappearance of the material within the systems, the rate of accumulation of the material within the system. So all this term will be coming into picture. So input equal to input, output, accumulation, rate of formation, rate of disappearance, all this will come into picture when we write material balance. Either it is for overall material balance or individual material balance. So when a chemical reaction is involved, so we are going to consider input, output, rate of formation, rate of disappearance, accumulation. So all this will come into picture. Okay, and then without chemical reaction means there is going to be input, output, accumulation. Okay, and again further we can classify this with chemical reaction and without chemical reaction into two: steady state, unsteady state. Okay, so the steady state, unsteady state, I think in fluid mechanics also you might have defined what is steady flow, unsteady flow. The parameter, the time derivatives, the parameters with respect to time, if it is differentiated with respect to time, it should be equal to 0. Steady state represents time derivatives as 0. Okay, so means let me say velocity is there, volumetric flow rate is there, or pressure is there, temperature is there. They don't change with respect to time, that is dp by dt or dv by dt, they don't change. Okay, in that case it is steady state process. Unsteady state process means with respect to time the parameters will change, the parameters tend to change with respect to time. Okay, so that way this with chemical reaction, without chemical reaction. So the with chemical reaction we can further divide into steady process, unsteady state process, steady state, unsteady state. Similarly, without material balance, without chemical reaction, further can be classified into with means steady state, unsteady state operations. Okay, so what is steady state operation? The time derivatives are 0, that is with respect to time the parameters do not change with respect to time, they are called steady state process. If it is fluid flow, I can say what is a steady flow? The parameters, the fluid flow in which the parameters do not change with respect to time are called steady flow, right? Unsteady flow means the parameters will change with respect to time in a fluid flow, that is called unsteady flow. Okay, that way we for material balance also, material balance with reaction, material balance without reaction, and both of them further get divided into steady process, unsteady state process. Okay, so that way we have material balance to be discussed. But how to perform the material balance, that we should know, because for doing material balance we should have a basis. We should have a basis to perform the material balance. Basis may be given in the problem, or we have to choose a basis. How to choose a basis if a basis is not given in the problem? Okay, so how to choose it? We have to be, there are certain guidelines which are available which we have to follow to choose a basis. Okay, basis represents sometimes the basis we can choose directly depending upon what is asked in the question. This is what I want to, this much needs to be produced, like that if it is given, you can fix that as the basis. But when you are choosing in such case, the calculation process may be little bit tedious. But if you choose a basis like 100 kg moles or 100 kg, okay, so that way it is a percentage composition may be given, so it will be easier for us to proceed in doing the calculation. However, at the end we may have to multiply or scale, by a scale we have to multiply to get the required answer that is asked in the question, right, or which we want to do when we are doing our project work. Okay, we have material balance, it can be overall material balance or individual material balance, that is, or component material balance or elemental material balance. Okay, that is for individual compounds or individual elements. Okay, so the overall material balance is for if a mixture is entering, another mixture is leaving. So overall how much mixture is entering, overall how much mixture is leaving. So that will constitute overall material balance. Individual or elemental material balance refers to component, individual component, like how much oxygen is entering, how much nitrogen is entering, how much methane is entering, like that. So compound or molecular substance. Okay, so how much substance is entering, individual substance. Okay, so we have overall material balance and individual material balance. So it is another form of law of conservation of mass, right? Material balance is another form of, it is a representation of law of conservation of mass. Okay, so what is that? If material is input, let us say material we are moving to material balance. The overall material balance or individual material balance can be written for, in general, if it is a material, how much material is entering the system, how much material is entering the system is material input. Material input. How much material is leaving the system, that is material output. So input minus output plus in the during the course of the reaction or during the operation time, how much material is generated within the system. How much material is generated within the system, or say for example if we see a reactant, how much it is consumed, right? How much it has disappeared. So that we have to consider as how much material is consumed within the system. So we have material input, we have material output, we have material formed within the system, and we have these three will be means material input is plus, material output is minus. So material input minus material output plus material formed minus material disappeared or consumed within the system. So these four makes the left hand side of the material balance equation. Material input minus material output plus rate of formation minus rate of disappearance within the system is equal to how much it is accumulated within the system. Accumulation within the system. Okay, accumulation within the system is the right hand side of the material balance. So material input minus material output plus material formed within the system minus material consumed within the system is equal to material accumulated within the system. Okay, so that constitutes our material balance. So why we should do material balance? And before doing material balance, we have to choose a basis, right? How to choose a basis and how to do a material balance, we have to follow certain guidelines, okay, to help us to do it effectively. How to do easily or how quickly we can do material balance, it depends upon how we are choosing our material basis. Okay, so that we are going to see now. So what are the guidelines for performing material balance? Okay, so let us look into it. If we say first point, guideline number 1 is when there is no chemical reaction involved in the system. When there is no chemical reaction involved in the system, no need of elemental balance. No need of elemental balance. Elemental balance, we need not go into individual compounds. Say for example nitrogen, oxygen, like that. Even if you consider coal, if you are burning the coal, coal means, when I say coal, we will only consider majorly carbon, but actually coal will contain some amount of hydrogen, some amount of oxygen, some amount of moisture, some amount of nitrogen, right? So all these things will be present. Ash, all this will be present in it. So we need not go when there is no chemical reaction, only size reduction is there. So why should we look into the individual elemental material balance? No need. So that way, if we need not look into elemental material balance if there is no chemical reaction is involved. So what we have to go for? We have to go for the compound, or even if it is a gas mixture, we can only for a composition, means compounds of a fixed composition, and components of fixed composition we can choose. So that way we can do perform the material balance when there is no chemical reaction is involved. There is no need to go for elemental material balance, only compound level or fixed composition. Let me say air is, if I consider air, we majorly consider only nitrogen and oxygen. So that mixture of air, nitrogen, oxygen, I will make use of it for material balance. I need not go into the individual nitrogen, oxygen unless if I have to determine what is my oxygen requirement, how much nitrogen is associated with it, like that. Okay, so that is not required when there is no chemical reaction is involved. Okay, when chemical reaction is involved, we have to do this elemental balance to determine the theoretical oxygen demand, how much nitrogen is associated with it, like that. Okay, so when chemical reaction is involved, what we have to do? Obviously we have to go for elemental analysis. We have to consider radical level, ion level, substances. Okay, so that all these things we have to do. So we have mainly we have to choose material balance for those compounds or for those elements which take part in the system which take part very least in the system. For example, that will help us to quickly get into determining the unknown parameters involved in the system. For example, if I am considering air is involved in the system, in that air, if it is combustion system, combustion reaction is taking place, oxygen only is consumed in the reaction. Okay, when oxygen is consumed, air contains oxygen and nitrogen. We know 21 mole percent, 79 mole percent nitrogen is associated with it. What happens to this nitrogen? It remains inert. It does not take part into the reaction until unless specified. See, N plus O2 NOx formation can be there, but in general nitrogen remains inert under normal conditions, or until unless specified we are assuming it to be inert. So that way whatever is the amount of nitrogen that is entering the system, the same amount will leave the system. That means it has remained inert. Just like how we people, when we are joining, we are single into the university or college, but when we are leaving also we remain single. So that way we didn't take part into the other extracurricular activities. Okay, so that way if a material like nitrogen present in air do not take part in the reaction, it is easier for us to do the elemental analysis for nitrogen. How much once we determine how much air is entering the system, this much air means this much mole percentage is nitrogen, that much is present in the air entering the system. So easily I can determine how much what is the amount of air that is leaving, because we know that same amount of nitrogen will be leaving the system also. That way elemental analysis for the components or elements or substances that take part leastly in the system should be considered for material balance, which will help us to solve the solve the problem and determine the unknown quantities easily. Okay, so that way which are not altered, which are not decomposed, or which are not formed during the reaction, such elements or such compounds, such substances should be chosen for material balance. So in that way, so as I gave example, nitrogen, if you consider, if you look at nitrogen, it does not take part during the coal combustion. C plus O2 CO2 is the reaction, but oxygen is, we won't send a pure oxygen, we will be sending atmospheric air, but air contains this much mole percent nitrogen and that much mole percent oxygen. So that way, that here if I consider this nitrogen, it does not take part into the reaction, and whatever is entering will be leaving the system. So that way it is easier to choose a material which are not altered, which are not decomposed, which are not formed, even if it is not newly formed during the reaction also, right? Such compounds can be chosen for doing the material balance. Okay, and when there is no chemical reaction involved, how we have to choose the basis? How we have to choose the basis? Whether it can be, the basis can be based on the raw material, this much raw material has to be processed, or this much product needs to be formed. Either we can look as raw material as the basis, or you can choose a product, that is like feed. See, if no reaction, we cannot say reactant to product. Now we can say feed product, feed exit stream, inlet stream, exit stream. So either the material balance can be totally, we can choose a basis based on I have to process this much feed, or I have to say I have to obtain this much product or this much exit stream, right? So that way we have to choose which one I have to choose as the basis, either the feed stream or either the exit stream, right? So that is needs to be chosen. And when there is no chemical reaction involved, we usually prefer to choose material balance basis as kg, mass, unit of mass, gram, kg or pounds. Okay, so mass basis is preferred when there is no chemical reaction is involved. Okay, when chemical reaction is involved, we prefer mole basis, because we are going to make balances, the stoichiometric reactions. We know this much moles of A, this much reacts with that much moles of B to form desired products, right? So that way mole basis is preferred when chemical reaction is involved. When there is no chemical reaction is involved, mass basis is involved. So when I say mass basis, we can choose anything like in terms of grams, in terms of kilograms, or in terms of pounds. Okay, that also it can be either reactant. Let me say this much feed, 100 kg of feed is entering the system, can be the basis, or I can say 100 kg of product is formed during the system. So that way either reactant or product, or without reaction, without reactant, no, in that case I can say 100 kg of feed I can consider, or I can consider 100 kg of product formed, for when there is no chemical reaction is involved. Why we have to choose this 100? What is there in 100? Why not 95? Why not 55? It is easier to choose 100 or even 1 kg or 100 kg. If you choose like that, mostly the compositions are given, right? Compositions of the material in a feed gas mixture is given. So they will be given in mass percentage or mole percentage. So when the percentage is given, when I assume the value of a basis as 100, then equally that whatever is the percentage, that is my kg, that is my mass. Let me say let me say methane 50% is present. Okay, nitrogen 50% is present in a gas mixture. Methane 50, nitrogen 50%. So when I consider 100 kg moles of feed, 100 kg of feed, what happens? My mass, my material mass is 50 kg of methane, 50 kg of nitrogen. We can directly write the percentage data as mass data. Okay, that is one way. Or even if it is reaction is involved, whatever reaction is involved, we are going to consider basis, moles basis, molar basis we are going to consider. There also we can consider with respect to reactant, or it can be based on product. Okay, either based on the reactant or based on the product we can choose the basis, but it should be in molar basis when chemical reaction is involved. So it can be gram moles, or it can be kilogram moles, or it can be pound moles also. That's not the issue. Gram moles, kilogram moles or pound moles, we can choose the basis. It can be again, it can be based on the reactant, or it can be based on the product, feed stream or output stream. So that way, so the basis can be chosen according to our convenience. Sometimes we can easily directly choose the basis from the data given in the numerical. The basis stated in the problem can be used, or if it is not convenient, the data given there is not convenient, I will choose my own basis and perform the calculation, and finally do the required scaling up or multiplying or division to get the data required for the given problem. Because when I do in 100 kg mole basis, that becomes a general problem. But for a given mass, how much I can finally do? For 100 kg basis, I have calculated this much. For a given mass in this particular case, I will I have to multiply and get. Otherwise, what will happen? If you take the data given there in some random value, so then each data you cannot verify. But if it is done in 100 kg mole, will be repetitive also. When I do it in 100, it is easier for me to write the percentage and do the calculations, right? So later I can cross verify always, but that will be independent also. Some data is changed in the given problem, same set of calculation I can repeat and only change the final value, right? So that way it is like a general expression we are making when we consider a basis of 100 kg moles or 100 kg or 1 kg mole or 1 kg. 1 also is useful because when you write mole fractions, in that cases it is when you consider 1 kg mole, whatever mole fraction is given, that much kg mole is the product, means components present in the system. So that way we can make use of this basis. Okay, and for basis also, if you considering elemental basis, elementary material balances, we should start from minimum present system. That is, as I said, minimum stream, one input, one output. Such material balance we should make, elemental balance. Such individual material balance, minimum one input, one output. Say there are 4 input, 4 output streams. Which one is first? We should prefer one input, one output. Then one input or 2 output, or 2 input or 1 output. Or then we should go for 2 input, 2 output. Then 3 input, 3 output. Then 4 input, 4 output. Such individual material balances we should perform as required. Okay, whatever is unknown parameters, accordingly we have to make the individual material balances when chemical reactions are involved. Okay, so now comes a question: what are the, because we have a set of equations, it is like mathematics. If you look at it in pure mathematical term, how many unknown parameters are present in a system? As I said, there can be 4 input stream, 4 output stream. So how many reactions, equations? I can write one overall material balance. I have to write overall material balance, right? So that is one equation. Remaining equation, how many individual material balances I have to write? How to fix, sir? If you ask me how to fix it, we have to choose depending upon how many unknown parameters are there. So here we define a term called degree of freedom. Degree of freedom for material balance. Okay, the number of degrees of freedom for material balance is nothing but if we have number of unknown equation, number of unknowns present in the given set of problem, given system, and how many independent equations that we can write. Why I use the term independent equations is we cannot have a duplicate of equations. Independent equations is, that is unique equations. How many unique equations I can write? Overall material balance is one unique equation. Okay, then individual material balances, how many individual material balance equations I have to write depends upon how many unknown equations I have, unknown parameters we have. Say unknown parameters, so number of unknowns, number of equations. We have two things here, two things which decide our material balance. One is number of unknowns present in a system and number of independent equations that we can write for this system. When they are equal, we can proceed for material balance. And number of unknown is 2 and number of equations are 2. I will solve it to get 2 parameters. It's like x plus y equal to this one equation, another x plus y equal to another term. So that way so when 2 equations are there, you can easily solve to get x and y. So that is called degree of freedom. Here what is degree of freedom? Define number of degree of freedom is the difference between number of unknowns and number of independent equations. It's like in mathematical term, degree of freedom is equal to n of u, number of unknowns, minus n of e, number of equations, independent equation, n of I is number of independent equations. So this difference is called degrees of freedom. So when we can proceed for material balance? When this difference is equal to 0. That is when number of unknown is equal to number of equations, then nu minus ne is equal to 0. So that way when degree of freedom is 0, we can proceed further to solve the problems. What happens, sir, when I have more unknown but I have very less equations? Will you be able to solve it? There are x, y, z. There should be 3 equations to simultaneously solve and get x, y, z values, right? So when
degrees of freedom of material balance. So here what is our aim? We have seen that in the definition of material balance, it is an attempt to make number of independent equations equivalent to number of independent equations equal to number of unknowns. So how many number of unknowns are there? If x and y are there, 2 unknowns, how many equations we require to solve them? We need 2 equations for 2 unknowns. In that case, we will be able to solve it. If there are 3 unknowns and we have only 2 equations, for example, we have 3 parameters x, y and z, and we have only 2 equations involving x, y, z. Will you be able to get all the 3 values of x, y, z? The problem becomes indeterminate. Similarly, if we have only 2 parameters x and y, but there are 4 equations, in that case, which 2 equations? 2 equations is sufficient to solve, but there are 4 equations. So which equations we should choose to solve that problem? So it is again up to our judgment, which two are more significant, or the equations involving the major components or predominantly present components. So that way the same thing is applicable here. So here degrees of freedoms of material balance, here we are going to have 2 parameters. One is 2 terms are involved. One is number of unknowns. How many number of unknown equations are involved in the system? That is one parameter. Another one is how many number of independent equations we are going to have. Number of independent equations. So here there can be a number of equations, but there cannot be duplication. See, there is 2x plus 3y equal to 10. So this another equation is there, 4x plus 6y equal to 20. So this from second equation, first equation, second equation can be obtained by multiplication or division or like that. So in those cases, such equations we should ignore. We should try to identify number of independent equations. The duplication should be avoided. Okay, that means equation 1 can be derived from another equation should be avoided while considering number of independent equations. So the number of unknowns, we have n number of parameters, like as I said x, y, z, or in our cases it can be various other parameters like density, velocity, like that. Okay, so here when number of equations and number of unknowns, the difference between these two is defined as degrees of freedom of material balance. Okay, so the difference between the number of unknowns and number of equations is defined as degrees of freedom. So when it is easier to proceed for solving the numericals, to proceed for material balance equations, when the number of unknowns is equal to number of equations, in that case degrees of freedom is 0. That is nu minus ne. Let me say u refers to unknown, e refers to equations. we have Nu minus Ne equal to 0. In that case, degrees of freedom is 0. That is the ideal case. Means we require such condition. When we have Nu equal to Nu, we are ready to proceed with material balance. We are ready to proceed with material balance. And second case is when number of unknown is greater than number of equations. As I said, x, y, z are there, but there are two equations only. In that case, the problem becomes indeterminate. We cannot solve it without identifying another equation. Okay, so third case is when number of equations is greater than number of unknowns. As I said, there are only two parameter x and y are there. How much equations we need? We need only two independent equations to solve the problem and obtain the values of x and y. But when you have more equations, in that cases, the judgments to choose which two equations to use involving which becomes our discretion. Okay, we can choose any two equation, but there should be logical reasoning, right? So available, you should choose the most equations which represents the major components, like the components of significance. Some component is present in 3%, 4%, and we are having an expression with such components. That should be avoided. The component percentage is more like 50%, 80%, 90% component. Equations involving such components should be considered while choosing few equations among various equations available. Okay, so we have three cases. First we have two parameters, number of unknowns and number of equations, and when number of unknowns is equal to number of equations, that way the difference is 0, then degrees of freedom is 0, we are ready to go for material balance, then only we can proceed to get solution. But when number of unknown is more than number of equations, the problem becomes indeterminate. It is difficult to solve it. When number of equations are more than number of unknowns, then it is our own discretion to choose the equations involving components of significance. Okay, such equation we should able to take. So this degrees of freedom is important before proceeding to solve the problems. We should have number of equations and the number of unknowns equal. The difference should be equal to 0. Okay, then similarly, while choosing this, what is this number of equations, we have to recognize the number of independent equations. What is that independent equation? As I said, the duplication should be avoided. From one equations which can be derived from another equation, we cannot choose such two equations. As I said, 2x plus 3y equal to 10, 4x plus 6y equal to 20. That cannot be, these two cannot be chosen as independent equation. One only we can choose, the other becomes dependent equation. So we have to recognize the independent equations. And another thing is, when there are components, similarly it's not only with respect to that is similar to the component. If two or more substances are present in a fixed ratio, then only one component should be taken, because from that one component the other component is dependent. If we consider the typical case of air, if we have a component balance for oxygen and if we write a component balance for nitrogen, these two are not independent equations. It should not be taken as independent equation, because from oxygen we can able to get the nitrogen. That's why these two are present in air as in a fixed ratio, and we are talking about air, nitrogen and oxygen present in air. So if I am writing the composition for air and nitrogen, the component, the amount of oxygen present can be found from these data. Air is known. If air is known, nitrogen or air is known, we can get both oxygen and nitrogen, because we know the mole fraction of oxygen and nitrogen in air. Or if we know nitrogen, we can find out how much is the associated oxygen. Or if oxygen is there, we can find out how much is the associated nitrogen. So that way, when these are present, such materials, such components which are present in fixed ratio, we should able to combine them into a group, and their group should be considered as one independent equation. Okay, oxygen component cannot be one independent, nitrogen cannot be one independent, air cannot be one independent. These three should represent only one equation, because in air, oxygen and nitrogen are present in a fixed proportion, right? So that is the guideline number 5. And coming to the another component called, what is tie substance, or what is tie component, or what is key substance or key component. key substance or key component is the it's like in material balance we are having several unknown parameters, right? So among the various unknown parameters, how to proceed with identifying one of the major parameter is which is present in small quantity, or it's not about small quantity, which is not actively taking part in the system, that is it has minimum input and minimum output. For example, we can always go for nitrogen, because whatever nitrogen is entering, it is not taking part in the reaction. That will be the same amount equal to the nitrogen present in the leaving stream, right? So nitrogen input and nitrogen output balance will help us to quickly identify one of the unknown parameters, either the feed amount or either the product amount. Similarly, in drying cases, we have talking about moisture removal in dryers. Okay, we have dry component and moisture present associated with it. We are removing moisture, but what happens to the dry component? That whatever is the amount of dry component entering, the same amount of dry component will be leaving the system at steady state, right? So that way, such components should be chosen for balancing material balance. Individual material balances for such components will help us to quickly get rid of solving the problem and obtaining unknown parameters. That's why the proper choice of key component is important for easier calculation of material balance. So what is a key component or key substance or tie component or tie substance is the amount which has minimum input and minimum output. Let me say one input, one output. So easier for us to quickly get into individual material balance and get one of the major parameters. Okay, so that is the way. So that is a key component. So such key components we have to identify. So that's why we are going to discuss about different systems. Whatever is the system, accordingly we are going to get which is the key component, right? So for one system, one will be key component. As I said, if it is air is involved, then nitrogen will be the key component, because we know you can easily make how much nitrogen is entering, how much nitrogen is leaving. If it is a dryer, we know dry component. Dryer means feed contains this much dry product. In the product also, the same amount of dry component will be present, right? So that way we can make material balance easily and get the unknown parameters. So that way the sixth point is about tie substance or tie component, or key substance or key component. Okay, when talking about this basis, we have seen we can do the material balance either based on mass basis. We can choose a mass as the basis, or if chemical reaction is involved, we can choose mole basis. This much moles are of reactant or product, whatever it is. So how many that can be done based on mole basis. And some cases we may have to take basis of time intervals. Question may be asked like, in 1 hour how much is the product is formed, or in 1 day how much product is formed, or in 1 year how much product is formed. Okay, so such things can be done. We have seen the material balance can be divided into two. One is overall material balance and another one is individual material balance or component material balance. So whatever, whether it is overall or individual, we are going to have an input, we are going to have an output, and we are having material generated within the system, and we have material consumed within the system, and then accumulation, the material accumulated within the system. So these are the terms which are going to be involved when we are writing the material balance, and depending upon whether it is steady state or unsteady state, at steady state accumulation term will be 0. Okay, so the input output will be present, and depending upon whether chemical reaction is involved or not involved, we are going to have this material generated within the system going to be 0, and material balance material consumed within the system will be 0. So when there is no chemical reaction involved, then these first two terms will be there: material input, material output. If it is unsteady state, we are going to have accumulation term, and at steady state we are going to have accumulation term also 0. So we are going to have material input minus material output equal to 0 for a material balance involving no chemical reaction and at steady state. Material balance involving no chemical reaction and at steady state, this equation will get simplified into simply material input minus material output equals 0. That is, material input is equal to material output. So this is applicable for overall mass as well as individual mass balances. Okay, so material balance is essentially a representation of law of conservation of mass. So we can write the material balance equation, general material balance equation. You should able to write always first write the general material balance. What is that? Material input minus material output plus material generated within the system minus material consumed within the system is equal to accumulation of material within the system. This we should write. Then for a given case, whether it is a steady state or unsteady state, we have to cancel, or we have, if it is steady state, we have to cancel accumulation term, right? Then we have to check in the system whether some chemical reaction is taking place or not, right? And if there is no chemical reaction taking place, then material generation as well as material consumption will be 0, right? So those two terms we have to cancel. So finally we have to simplify and write material input minus material output is equal to 0 for a steady state system without chemical reaction. If chemical reaction is involved, we have to consider what is the rate at which the say for example, if I am writing the component balance for component A, if it is a reactant, or if it is not, then in that case it is not, if it is not formed during the reaction, it is not formed as an intermediate or byproduct, so in that case the material generated within the system will be 0, and if it is consumed, how much A is consumed, that will be, we have to consider. So that we are going to discuss as a separate module, material balance involving chemical reactions. But this is the general equation. What you write down the material balance equation means we have to write down this completely. That is material input minus material output plus material generated within the system minus material consumed within the system equal to accumulation of material within the system. Okay, so this is what, this is the general material balance, and we are going to do material balance for various unit operations, right? Unit operations, like we are going to do it for evaporation, we are going to do material balance for crystallization, we are going to do material balance for dryer, we are going to do material balance for absorption, we are going to do material balance for distillation. So these unit operations we are going to perform material balance equation, and also mixing of solutions, okay, dissolution. So for that also we are going to perform material balance equations. So these are some of the examples for unit operations, that is no chemical reaction is involved cases. Okay, we will discuss about each unit operation in briefly before proceeding to solve the numericals. The unit operations for which we are going to learn material balance is are evaporation, crystallization, absorption, distillation, drying, extraction. Okay, evaporation as the name mentions, it is an unit operation in which we are evaporating out some of the solvent. Here the desired product maybe is what is evaporated, because we can even again condense it and collect it. Okay, so that evaporation is performed to separate out, mainly for concentrating, means like a dilute solution is there, we want to obtain a concentrated solution. So how to get it? By evaporating out the solvent from the system. So that unit operation is called evaporation. There are various applications, various industries in which evaporation is performed as a unit operation. So that actually in crystallization also evaporation is one of the modes of bringing out the supersaturation. So that's why I am directly going to discuss about crystallization in this lecture. When we solve numericals, I will explain evaporation in detail. Now we will see the concepts of crystallization, because actually this unit operation you are going to learn in mass transfer courses. Evaporation you are going to learn in heat transfer course, remaining you are going to learn them in mass transfer 1 and mass transfer course 2 in your forthcoming semesters. So here I am going to give a brief introduction of crystallization. One of the unit
operations that is carried out in chemical industries is crystallization. It is one of the way of separating the products from a mixture. Say for example, if you have a homogeneous solution, if by forming a solid particle out of it, we are trying to separate one of the component from it. Okay, so it may not be complete separation, but mainly we are separating out one of the component from a homogeneous mixture, right? So for example, if we have a homogeneous solution, we want to separate one of the substance from it in the solid form, and that solid is in the form of crystals. Okay, solids is in the form of crystals. So what we should know, what is crystal? Okay, what is a crystal? It is a highly organized array of molecules, ions or atoms in a three-dimensional crystal lattice. Okay, so it's a highly organized array of molecules, ions or atoms in a three-dimensional crystal lattice. So this is called crystal. Okay, so this crystallization process mostly gets hindered by various factors. So unhindered crystal growth seldom happens. Okay, unhindered crystal growth seldom happens, and it is governed by the rate at which the crystal growth taking place is governed by certain definite laws. Okay, and mainly it is affected by degree of supersaturation, the component that needs to be solidified or crystallized, how much it is saturated in the solution, in a homogeneous solution matters. Okay, so what is what is the crystallization? It is a separation process by which one of the substance present in a homogeneous solution is separated out in the form of solids called as crystals. Okay, separation of one of a substance from a homogeneous liquid solution by forming out by precipitating out crystals out of it. So this crystal growth follows certain rules. Okay, so particularly when you have similar 2-3 solutions and there are 5-6 crystals are getting formed, the rate at which each crystal formed under a uniform condition is going to be the same. The rate at which the crystal goes, that is called actually delta L law, that is like geometric law, means when under similar conditions all crystals will grow at the same rate. It's not that under same concentration or same saturated solution, two crystal size of uniform size is there, one crystal will grow bigger and another crystal will grow smaller. No, it's not like our human growth taking place under different environment. Okay, so in a homogeneous solution, if you consider 5-6 crystal small particles are there, actually we call it as nuclei, that small crystals are there present, they all grow at the same rate. So if one crystal is grown from 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters, another crystal will also grow from 1 to 5 centimeters, not less or greater than it. Okay, so that is called delta L law. Okay, so what essentially we are considering the material balance. First we are trying to focus on material balance that is taking place in a crystallization process. Okay, actually the crystallization process or unit operation mainly depends upon two steps. Okay, we can say it depends upon two. One is nucleation. Nucleation refers to initial formation or initial precipitation out of the solid substance. So they are called nuclei. Okay, nucleation is first step. So first nucleation is the first drop of first solid particle formation. Okay, precipitating out of it. Okay, once this nucleation is formed, then about the second step is crystal growth. Okay, so nucleation, so to enhance the crystal growth, if nuclei is initially added to the crystallizer, that crystal growth is going to be quick. Okay, so more time will take place for this nuclei formation. So that's why in most of the operations what they do is we mix some of the nuclei in solid particles, small size small particles into it, so that over which the crystal growth will be easier to form. It is like reaching out to the barrier, reaching out to a critical state, then once it is growth will be uniform. So that way nucleation is in first step that takes place in crystallization process, and crystal growth is the second step that takes place in a crystallization process. So if you are looking for a material balance, as I said, it is easier to first draw a overall block diagram with which we will easily understand what are all entering, what is leaving the system. Okay, so let us have a diagram. send in feed which enters the crystallization unit and we vaporize some of the components and the mother liquor is entered, mother remaining liquid is mother liquor, the crystallized solid product is taken out as the product. Okay, so that is called crystal. Crystals will be coming out. So typically if you look at a flow diagram of a crystallization unit, block diagram for a crystallization process, essentially a feed containing that solid particle substance, a homogeneous solution will be entering the crystallization unit. Okay, within the unit heat transfer as well as mass transfer is taking place. Okay, we have to supply heat to vaporize some of the solvent, right? Some evaporation will be taking place. Okay, so that way then crystallization is affected. So once the solid particles are formed, the left out liquid is called mother liquor. So there are one input to the system with respect to material, feed is entering the system, and there are three outputs, one in the form of crystals, two in the form of evaporation product, solvent vaporization, whatever. Okay, so then third one is called mother liquor. Okay, the left out liquid is called mother liquor. So we have M. So there is one input and three outputs are there. So when we write input equal to output, we get the material balance, as simple as it is. So feed is equal to overall material, this is called overall material balance. The overall material balance for the system is F equal to E plus C plus M. So E is the kg of evaporated substance, C is the crystal amount, and M is the mother liquid in kg. Okay, so say for example 100 kg is entering, if 20 is the evaporation, 50 is C, remaining is to be M. Okay, 20, let us say 100 is entering, 20 is E, 50 is C, 20 plus 50 70. So what should be the mother liquor amount? 100 minus 20 plus 50, 100 minus 70 is 30 kg. So 30 is the mother liquor amount. So that is the material balance here. Law of conservation of mass. Energy can not disappear. Okay, so that means mass cannot disappear. Law of conservation of mass cannot disappear. In the same unit, in the another model, we are going to do energy balance also. In that case, we are going to consider what is the energy taking, energy input and energy output. So right now we are concerned about material balance, mass input and mass output. So that's why we have F equal to E plus C plus M. Okay, so where amount of feed in kg is F, mother liquor in kg is M, crystal product formed is in kg C, and evaporation E in kg. Okay, so there can be mass fraction of the substance that is being crystalled out. Let me say A. Let A refers to component A. Let A be our crystallized product out. So we want crystals of A that is coming out of an evaporation crystallization unit. So what we are having is A. So let the mole fraction also can be written, right? For we have to write the material balance for that is called individual material balance. Individual material balance. So we can write individual material balance for A. Let it be because for a binary system A and B are only present, we can skip A because mole fraction refers to component A. So let A be XA be the XF. Let XF be the mole fraction of mass fraction here. XF be the mass fraction of component A in the feed. XF is the mass fraction, mass percentage. It may be given in percentage. Let me say 30%. So if I say 30%, it is mass percentage. If it is 0.3, mass fraction. Okay, so but what we are referring to here, XF is mass fraction. So XF is X of, let X of be the mass fraction of component A in the field. Let Xe be the mass fraction of evaporated mass fraction of A in the evaporation, means evaporated substance, liquid vapor. Let Xc be the mass fraction of component A in the C, that is in crystal, and let Xm be the mass fraction of A in mother liquid.
Balance
M.
is
So how can we write the material balance
F equal
for
to E plus C plus
individual
M.
material balance? So what
And
we have
individual
written here
material
is
balance for any
overall
component
material
A
balance.
is its mole fraction multiplied by total mass, that is Xf into F equal to Xc into E plus Xc into C plus Xm into M.
Okay, we can write the individual material balance for component A. Individual material balance for component A is how much kg of A is present in the field. Let me say if it is 30, if F is 100 kg, is Xf is 0.3, 0.3 into 100, 30. So 30 kg of is the amount of A present in the field. So that's how amount of, it is in kg actually, right? Xf into F we get what is the kg of A present in the field. So that is the amount of A, and that should be equal to whatever is the amount of A that is present in three outputs, right? So that way Xe into E plus Xe into C plus Xm into M. Okay, so that way we get the material balance, individual material balance for component A. Okay, so that
As one of the option for separating out one of the component. Okay, so here the advantages of the crystal formations are they are uniform in size and shape. So as I said earlier, different particle nuclei are there, and at the same environment they all of them grow in the geometric size. If x direction this is the growth rate, in y direction this is the growth rate, they follow the same. So there we get a uniform particle size when the crystallization is taking place, and it is easier to separate the crystals by just using a filtration and washing. We can dry them and use it as the crystals. Okay, so the cake tendency formation is reduced, and the crystals that are formed are high purity one. So that's why sugar crystals are used, right? So they are of high purity, and also they have, they are under some certain crystal lattice, no? So that's why they don't crumble easily. Okay, so various crystal lattices they can be there. It can be cubic, it can be hexagonal, it can be trigonal, it can be tetragonal, it can be orthorhombic, monoclinic, triclinic, and it can be metals. So okay, crystal can be classified based on the type of bond needed to hold the particles in place in the crystal lattice. In such case, the crystal can be even classified as metals, ionic crystals, valence crystals, molecular crystals, hydrogen bonded crystals, and semiconductors. Substances such as silicon and germanium, when they contain very small amounts of impurities, have lattice deficiencies with holes where electrons are missing and positive charges are in excess or with extra electrons present. That is called semiconductors, right? So you are going to learn about this crystallization in mass transfer course, mass transfer, maybe in mass transfer 2 when you are in third year. Okay, can crystal can be formed only when there is supersaturation in the homogeneous solution. Once the solution is supersaturated, crystal formation takes place. Okay, it is how the supersaturation can be affected in a system by removing the solvent. That is, supersaturation is what? The amount of solute present in the solvent is more than its critical content. That way, if you are removing out the solvent out of a component system A and B, if you are reducing the content of B, thereby you are increasing the concentration. So that way it gets supersaturated. So that is a major way. By evaporation of the solvent, we can bring in supersaturation. Another way is by cooling also crystals will be formed, right? Even when you keep water in fridge, ice cubes are formed, right? So that is another way of formation of crystals by cooling. And there is another way, a process called salting, where we add a third component which will be added to the system A and B. A is solute, B is solvent. What happens is this third component C added to the system, it forms a new mixed solvent with B. That is, B plus C forms a new solvent where the solubility of the solute is highly reduced. So this is called salting. Okay, there is one more way of called as precipitation, where a new solute may be created by chemically adding a third component, and by the reaction between this C and A we have a new solute formed. Thus formed solute will have less solubility in the solvent, that's why it gets precipitated out. So this method is called precipitation. So overall we can have three methods. One is by evaporation of the solvent, by cooling the system, or by salting or precipitation. Okay, so this is crystallization. We will do numericals on crystallization in the next class. Basic principles of material balance, what are the guidelines associated with it, and we have seen in detail about what is crystallization. Thank you for joining my classroom. If you have any doubts, please contact me or comment here. Thank you.